Hello, and welcome to another edition of Sharp Takes. We're catching up here. I've been away for a little while, and goings on in Montpelier have been going on. And I'm delighted to have as my guest the superintendent of the MAUSD school districts. That's right here in Bristol and neighboring towns. And Patrick Reen is our superintendent. And welcome, Patrick. It's great to have you here.
Thanks, Dave.
I'd like to start by asking you, what's your perspective on what's been happening at the state level?
Uh, it's been very dynamic, as you sort of alluded to just now, in Montpelier. First of all, I want to express great appreciation for the effort by lawmakers in Montpelier. This Education Transformation Bill 454 uh, has been a significant undertaking, and really the entire session. And lots of people put a lot of time and energy into really digging into some challenges that face education in Vermont, and I think about it from the lens of equity. I think for me is a significant driver in some of the challenges that we have and efforts underway to try and address. I think about it from opportunity as well. I think we are at risk of, if not already experiencing, not giving our students some opportunities that they deserve as a result of some of the challenges that we're experiencing in Vermont. And then, of course, affordability. That's, I think, what really prompted all of this effort, from a couple of budgets ago when many didn't pass and our communities were saying affordability is a real problem with our taxes and cost of education in Vermont. We need to do something about it. So affordability for me is absolutely a big part. And at least as much, the equity and the opportunity components of this are really driving it as well. So much appreciation for really digging in and tackling the work. When I think about sort of the key components, I think a key component from the work that's happening around H454 is around scale. Pretty specifically in the bill right now, it's around larger school districts in the state, which I support. We've made efforts locally to try and have fewer school districts that are larger to create some scale here. And so I've been a proponent of that for a while now. So that makes good sense to me. And I recognize that means there are fewer superintendents and superintendent offices, and that's the right thing to do. A lot of differing opinions about what the right number is, and I don't have a specific number in mind. I think we need to take a lot of things into consideration that they're considering right now. So thinking about what makes sense geographically. We have some mountains and rivers, and we have some things that need to be contended with as we think about what districts make sense. I do think we need to think about size. The number 4,000 to 8,000 has been put out there. I think that's a reasonable place to begin. I think the reality is there are going to be some places that the geographic area would have to be so large to encompass 4,000 students that it might not make sense. So I think that number of 4,000 may be too big in some places. I'm thinking about the Northeast Kingdom in particular. But I think generally speaking, as an idea, 4,000 to 8,000 is a decent place to start thinking about what could make sense for larger districts. What I like about the larger districts is, for me, it's around this idea of equity. I think one of the things, if we just use our local examples, when we merged under Act 46, we didn't really save any money. When Addison Northeast Supervisory Union became the Mount Abraham Unified School District. But what I do think we have achieved is significantly improved equity for students across the schools within our district. Um, and I think as we contemplate moving to these larger districts, I think we can take a step further even in improving the equity for students within that larger school district.
So you don't expect necessarily any savings.
There probably will be some savings, but I think the savings will be relatively minimal in terms of relative to the challenge that we face from an affordability perspective. Fewer school districts with fewer central offices isn't going to be the solution to the problem. It'll be a step in the right direction, perhaps a baby step, but a step in the right direction, I think an important step to take, and it isn't going to solve the problem. perhaps it positions us better to solve the problem, but it alone doesn't solve the problem. I think I forget the exact percentage, but all of the superintendent's offices in the state combined make up something like 4 or 5% of all spending. So even if you did away with all superintendent's offices,
which some would
which
advocate
some might
for.
advocate for, we still haven't tackled the affordability problem.
Yeah.
There's more work to do beyond that. And I think that's where conversations around scale, some intent language in the bill speaks to scale a bit. This notion of, I think it's regional high schools. I forget the term, but sort of the idea that there are fewer high schools that are maybe a bit further away, middle schools to a lesser extent, and then more local elementary schools. That notion of intent is written into the bill, and that makes some sense. But I do think achieving some element of scale beyond just central offices is going to be needed to address some of the affordability challenges that we face.
I think you had a consultant that came and worked with this district back when you were thinking about consolidating
Hmm.
greater consolidations here. Um, I think I recall him saying that the ideal school district was just under 4,000, 3,900 is what I think I recall in his documents, and that makes more sense as we move towards these larger school districts. um, the like you talked about the affordability issues, we're we're still going to see opportunities that we want to provide our students that we have in the past, and we'll lose if we don't consolidate. That implies that we're going to spend some of the savings in creating or maintaining those opportunities.
Hmm.
We still have mental health issues going on with our communities and and our student bodies, and we have healthcare, which is a huge cost driver in our school district. So, yeah, I don't see so much savings of money as I did not see savings of money in Act 46. It's what it leads to is being able to spend money more effectively uh, than in past, or not losing things that you might lose if you didn't take those steps.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think it's unlikely to see tax rate decreases. Probably the more realistic approach is curb tax rate increases. And along those same lines, at the same time, getting more for relatively similar dollars for our students.
Right.
Yeah, so
So,
curbing the growth and increasing the opportunities for students along the way.
yeah. And maybe changing how we fund, how we collect tax dollars. I know there's quite a lot of interest in parts of the state to move towards an income system where
Mhm.
it's not based on property value. Um, uh, so I think that might play into it as well, as how we collect taxes from our citizens might change in the future.
Yeah, I agree. One of the other things that's coming to mind for me as I'm thinking about these larger districts, so I'm thinking about, so larger districts is a key component to the bill. A foundation formula is a key component to the bill. And when I think about the larger districts, one of the things that's concerning me a little bit with the conversations that are happening as recently as yesterday at the state house around negotiations with this bill is there seems to be a lot of focus and attention on independent private schools, and in some ways at a cost to public education
Mhm.
attending to the needs of those schools. And I want to recognize that we have a relatively small number, I think maybe four public independent high schools, or sorry, private independent high schools that serve a really key role in those regions. That without those schools, there wouldn't be a nearby public high school for those students to attend. So I think there's absolutely an important role. It's just really challenging, I think, when the rules apply differently to public sector than they do to the private independent sector. In particular, in a foundation formula environment where we may have to pull from spending that would otherwise be going to students to support their education in their public school, and effectively spending less than the foundation formula to free up funds to send to independent schools because tuition rates are higher than the foundation formula would be.
By we, you mean superintendents in public school systems.
Correct. Yeah.
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 Or and I think of it in our small school district here is that if we have 10 students who decide to uh, use tax dollars to attend an independent school at roughly 20,000 bucks per kid, you're talking about losing $200,000 out of your budget. That's not small potatoes.
And even some of that, so let's say the foundation formula dollars would follow those students. We're not getting that same $20,000 per student
Yeah, that's what
in
I'm
the
talking
foundation
about. Yeah,
formula.
right.
So we're sending, that student that chooses to go to that independent school, we're sending their dollars with them to that independent school. And we would have to take some dollars from a few of the other kids
That's right.
to accompany them to pay that bill. And that's a piece for me. Like, if in particular in those areas where those independent schools are really vital to providing a high school education, um, I think it's a necessary thing, for funds to follow the student, and it should be the same funds as if they were in a public school, so that it doesn't have an additive effect of further reducing what we can do in
Yeah.
our public schools.
Let's talk for a minute about our school district. And you're trying to negotiate or understand what's happening at the state level. At the same time, you're trying to build a budget and think about the future of your district and your students under your control or responsibility. What do you see going forward? I think I read some things in the newspaper that are interesting. Maybe you'd like to talk a little bit about how you see going forward.
I would love to. So we have some challenges to face ahead, and I'll talk more about those in a minute. But in anticipation of whatever challenges may come, it felt really important to kind of get centered again around our why. Like, what does our community value? What does our community want to see our education system provide for the students that are in it? And let's get really clear there, so that when we face challenges, we can lean into that and say, all right, so this is our why. So let's make sure as we're making change that is necessary, that we're making change in pursuit of this why. Not just change to respond to a problem, but still be in pursuit of something that we want to achieve for our students.
It's a lot better to be positive about what you're looking for instead of trying to avoid what you're not looking for.
Exactly. And I just think about, like, it's probably not wise to assume at any point in the near future we'll be in a very stable time that we don't have to worry about what's to come. When I think of, this is my ninth year as superintendent in MAUSD, I started when Act 46 was midstream. We went right from that to a series of really challenging budget cycles. Now we're talking about education transformation, and we have more really difficult budget cycles ahead. So in 9 years at least, there hasn't been a
An
moment
easy
of
one.
stability.
Yeah.
So I think we have to anticipate more challenges and more change ahead, and be really clear about what's our mission, what are we really trying to do, so that
Yeah.
we're changing towards something, not just making change because we have to.
And
And
what
so
would that look like?
so what we have done, we started, really last spring. We reached out to a group called Up for Learning. They've been doing a lot of work around the state and in other states. And they worked with us to engage our community in a portrait of a learner process. So throughout the year, with a group of about 40 students and adults, and these are community members, staff members, administrators, support staff, board members, and students ranging from grades 5 through 12, acting as sort of this core team. We really reached out to our community and said, what are the skills, what are the characteristics, and what are the experiences that you think every student in MAUSD should have? And so we heard from, I think, more than 1,100 voices about all of those. And we took all that really messy data, working with students, to sort of analyze what are the themes that are emerging from this. And from that, we developed our portrait of a learner that really articulates what our community is looking for. That portrait of a learner is something that the board is going to be leaning into as they think about rewriting their ends policy. And the board ends policy effectively directs me as superintendent to achieve these outcomes or these ends for our students in MAUSD. With that portrait of a learner and the new ends policy, we'll have what we need to revise our strategic plan, which will help us really drive toward those outcomes that we want for our students. So as all this change is coming, we're going to continue to get deeper and deeper and more centered on our why. And so when we have to make change, which is, I think, inevitable, we can do that in a really intentional way that really moves us forward and doesn't feel like it's necessarily, hopefully, moving us backward. So I feel really good about where we are and the trajectory we're on in that regard. And great timing because we have some really formidable challenges coming. And I'm not even talking about the legislation that we just discussed for a minute. I think the earliest we're going to see the foundation formula, which looks like it will remove millions of dollars from Madison County, um, which I want to be clear, I support the concept of foundation formula, even though I know Addison County is going to be seeing money sort of not coming to us that otherwise would have, because I think it helps improve equity for students across the state. That said, when that comes, that will be an added challenge. But before we even get to the point where any of this legislation might be enacted, we're facing an FY27 budget that's going to be really, really difficult. We are looking at a use of $118 million at the state level to buy down the tax rate for this year.
What a mistake, in my
And that's
view.
going to be a big hole
Yes,
that we as local school districts are going to effectively have to kind of either make reductions to overcome or increase tax rates to
right.
overcome or some combination of the two. So that's a really big use of one-time funds that we're going to have to reckon with. We are also going to see for multiple consecutive years now another pretty substantial reduction in our pupil count. So our long-term weighted average daily membership. That's going to have another significant effect. Healthcare costs are expected to go up by double-digit increases again, which is going to have an effect. The salary increases are going up fairly significantly next year, which I support and is a cost that we're going to have to reckon with. So we have a combination of factors that is looking to make FY27 a really difficult
Yeah,
budget year for us
yeah,
to build. And
yeah.
and I have no reason to believe at this point that there's relief on the way. And yet, when we found ourselves up against these things, relief has come. But I don't see another use of $118 million in a subsequent year
Yeah.
to dig us out of that hole. So ideally, we would have had more time to really work with our portrait of a learner to change our ends policy, to have built our strategic plan and really have things underway before this change affects. Unfortunately, I think the change is coming a little faster than we're going to be able to do all of that. But at least it will be sort of simultaneous. So we can still have this notion of our why and our sort of North Star from our community about what we're really working toward while we consider options to respond to this challenge that's in front of us, which is going to be FY27.
Can I ask about your portrait for a learner, in specific about how does career and technical education play into that portrait?
Um, I think about so much of what we learned through that portrait of a learner process involves some of those community-based, hands-on kind of experiences, which I think CTE programming does so well. We do some of that as well within programs that we have at Mount Abraham, and I think about our students of all ages engaging with the community. But I think it melds well. It was a pretty specific MAUSD portrait of a learner, not so much a Hannaford Career Center portrait of a learner, but I think the dovetailing of the experiences that kids have, like it's when students from MAUSD attend the Career Center, that is part of their educational programming that we're proud to support. So I see it dovetailing quite well.
Yeah, because I noticed in the paper last week quite a list of MAUSD students who are graduating from the Career Center.
Yep.
So there is a number of students that MAUSD has to pay the Career Center for, right?
Hmm.
To go to the Career Center.
Yep.
And as you talk about and think about consolidation and moving forward, I guess I have to say it's my opinion that we won't solve that issue about sending money from academic school districts to career centers until it's seamless.
Yeah.
And right now, it's far from seamless.
It is far from seamless. Um, and from my perspective, the fact that there is a cost to MAUSD for every student that attends a career center has never entered into the conversation about what programming we are or aren't doing at Mount Abe or our support for kids going there. My own two daughters went through the career center, at the Hanford Career Center, had wonderful experiences, and what they're doing with their lives now post high school is directly impacted by that experience. So I'm a fan of CTE. I think that programming it's a way that so many students learn best. um, so I'm a big fan. I'm a big supporter of it, um, and it only can help all of that if the funding gets more seamless, and frankly, if we bring CTE more into the fold of K-12 public education as opposed to sort of the something else that I think it often gets
Yeah,
seen as.
yeah. So, what might be your notion going forward? Depends a lot on what happens at the state level, but what would be your notion in terms of Addison County? Do we want to be part of the governor's five county school district? Do we want to have an Addison County school district? If so, what does it look like?
Um, I think I think five school districts is too much. Like too much in terms of how the size of the district. Like those are just too big and too far removed. And I think, the idea that a district would run from Orwell to Canada seems just too much for me. That said, I think, in Addison County, a countywide school district might make great sense. And in other cases, countywide doesn't make as much sense. So I think a blanket district should all be countywide doesn't really work. I think that's the challenge with Vermont. One size fits all rarely works when you have, you know, Chittenden County and Franklin County, neighboring counties, and so different,
Mhm.
that we have to somehow account for that reality in Vermont. And that's where I really support the idea of let's get people who understand the community context, the school functionality. Let's get the right people in the room to talk about what makes sense for size, location, etc. of school districts. I also do support, for the most part, current school district boundaries sort of remaining intact and then combining some of those to make the new districts, because then you're maintaining some level of an identity that exists, rather than saying, we're going to take two towns from MAUSD and we'll join that district, and a different two towns will join another district. I think that could have a negative effect on sort of a community feel. So again, like, I don't have any preconceived notion of how many districts there should be, or if it should be countywide or some other structure. But I think we need to get the right people in the room who really understand all of the implications to make the decisions about what that's going to be.
So that's interesting. So 454 had one group of the so-called right people. The Senate had another group of the right people. We have the State Board of Education. We have this, I think it's called Council on Public Education, that has been meeting for a year. What is your version of the right group?
I think the superintendent perspective is really important, and I recognize it shouldn't be a current sitting superintendent because there's skin in the game, all that sort of stuff. But I think someone who has sat in the superintendent seat, really probably multiple people who have sat in the superintendent seat, business manager seat, um, that have that kind of perspective on the ins and outs on how school districts operate and the implications of if this then that. So I think that's really important. I can appreciate the need for lawmakers to be present because in the end they are the ones that are going to make the decision about what the legislation says. So I can appreciate that perspective, but yeah, a committee that doesn't have business manager, probably board member, superintendent perspective sitting on it feels like it's going to be missing something pretty significant.
Yeah. Isn't that what the House did, sort of?
It is. Yeah. So the House
Okay.
had actually, I think it might have been at one point at least exclusively superintendents, business managers, and maybe board members that made up that committee that was going to suggest not less than three, or maybe specifically three options for what a district configuration could be.
Yeah. All right, so we have sort of the bones of a plan in front of us, depending on what the legislature does. Uh, Local school districts like ours is going to be facing some huge consequences or hurdles to moving forward, regardless of what happens in Montpelier. Is that
That
what
is
you're saying?
correct.
Yeah,
It's true for us in MAUSD for sure. I can't speak as much obviously to other districts, but we definitely have some huge hurdles even before we get to this legislation.
yeah.
We have a lot of work to do
How are we going to solve those?
together. And I think again, together centered on our why. This work that we've done, I think, is going to be really critical in keeping us focused on what our job is as a school district,
Yeah,
as outlaid by our community, and then codified through board policy and strategic planning.
yeah. It just seems to me that, all of this is going to require votes by the public to support what's going on. And if they see another, you know, 20% tax increase, so that, you know, depending on, I don't see how whatever happens at the state is going to solve these problems in MAUSD. So that means we're going to have to do a lot of cutting, it seems to me,
I mean,
one
that's
way or another.
probably my greatest criticism. And again, with much appreciation for the effort and recognition of the intense politics around change, in particular when you're talking about schools. My greatest criticism is the bill as it stands now mostly increases pressure on local communities to do what's needed to respond to the challenge, as opposed to facing the challenge head on and tackling the things that are making it really difficult. When I think about, I mentioned there's probably some savings, though very little, in fewer and bigger school districts. Outside of that, from a cost containment perspective, there's not a whole lot in the bill. There's not a whole lot that actually moves us towards scale other than bigger districts. But if we don't start looking at scale at the school level, um, I think we're going to continue to see our only option being doing less of the same things we've always been doing, and doing less of what we've always done as our strategy to achieve this why, our ends policy, our portrait of a learner, isn't an effective strategy.
Yeah. So what does that mean? Does that mean all Addison County high school kids are going to go to Middlebury in order to get the scale needed to solve the problems?
I think that's going to become the work that we need to do together, whoever the together is. It doesn't look like that's going to be legislated, but the pressure to do something is going to increase as a result of legislation, and we're going to have to come together as a community, as communities, to have conversations about, here's our new reality. um, I think there's been a lot of work in a lot of districts to center on the why. So here's our new reality, here's our why. What options do we have available to us to address the challenge while remaining in pursuit of our why? And whether that's two districts or three or five or 12, like, I don't know who the we are that needs to come together. um, I think there's value in some of that being led at the state level. I don't see that on the horizon, and we're going to have to respond pretty soon.
Yeah, if we're going to, I mean, you're saying these things are going to hit us in FY27. That ain't far away.
We've already started modeling FY27 with lots of assumptions at this point, so that effectively, in a way, beginning to build the FY27 budget has happened, has already been
Begun.
started.
Yeah,
Hmm.
right. And the pressure's on.
Pressure's on.
All right. Well, thanks for sharing your thoughts. Um, they're difficult road ahead, it seems to me, and we need to all buckle down and do the best we can for our children.
And I do think, I'm often in a position where I am in the unfortunate place of providing doom and gloom and an unfortunate reality. But I also always share with so much opportunity as well. We, even if, when I think about just within MAUSD, there's a lot of opportunity in the way in which we respond to the challenge. The challenge is formidable. It's not great news. Nobody wants to hear it. We have to address it because I don't think, to your point, our community is going to say yes to 20% tax rate increases. Um, and we have a lot of opportunity to explore in ways that can move us toward our why while addressing the financial realities. And I just would encourage everyone to keep an eye on that, which means we we can't do the same thing or less of the same thing and face this challenge and get to our why.
Yeah.
And so I would just encourage everyone to really be thoughtful about and be prepared for what can we do differently? What change are we prepared to make
And
in
get
order to get toward
engaged.
the why and get engaged? Yeah.
Yeah.
Because in the end, it's regardless of the challenge, what we're trying to do for students isn't changing.
Right. So there it is for today's viewpoint on where we are with education. I want to thank Patrick Reen for being part of it, and we have a lot to look forward to. Thanks for listening.
Want to be a guest on Sharp Takes? Have an opinion you want Dave to hear about? Email davesharp@gmavt.net.